right, here we go. Hello, everyone here. This is Mark Anthony with AI Edge Promotions. I hope everyone is doing well today. As you and I know, I bring you the best of the best doctors that's in their niche. And sometimes, we wonder, who really is going to help us out? Who's going to help us get out of pain? Are we able to get out of pain, or are we going to be staying stuck in the same rut? And today I have a special guest, Dr. Ring, and you can also find him at Eastern Oklahoma chiropractic.com. That is Eastern Oklahoma chiropractic.com. Today we're going to talk about something different. We're not going to talk about stem cells. We're not going to talk about neuropathy. We might, I don't know, or even chiropractic. But we're going to be talking about a subject that's called the power that made the body heals the body. And it's really cool because I was talking with Dr. Ring and we were just kind of putting things together and seeing what topic is kind of close to his heart right now. And I'm sure he'll tell us other things that he does. But before we go into the power that made the body heals the body, Dr. Ring, I want to say thank you so much for being here with us. And we appreciate it. And tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into chiropractic and and what you're doing currently right now in the Eastern Oklahoma chiropractic.com.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me on today. So I started my chiropractic practice in 2010. So we're 16 years into this thing. I grew up in a household that didn't really have much education. Nobody had gone to college before, but I always excelled in school. I really wanted to be in some sort of health space. I wasn't quite sure what that looked like. But when I went to college, I was on a baseball scholarship. I was going pre-med. Knew that I wanted to do something in the health arena, but again, wasn't quite sure. So, a few years into my college career, I ended up with a back injury, which got me into a chiropractic office as a patient. And it was at that time that I, experienced chiropractic for the first time with a local chiropractor here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And from start to finish, the way that I was treated from day one, the analysis, the X-rays, the explanation, and the treatment, and ultimately the results got me excited about chiropractic. So, like I said, I've been in chiropractic, been in business since 2010, 16 years in, married 20 years. My wife, Kara, I got two daughters, teenage girls, freshman in high school and a junior in high school. So life is fun, life is busy. But I love what I do. I love serving the community and ultimately helping people feel great, live pain-free, and maximize their health potential.
That's awesome. So, I know that you do chiropractic. Are there other niches that you do help that are within your practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's a typical chiropractic office as far as, we're going to be, using X-ray analysis to find out problems, case histories. We'll be doing some manual adjustments to make sure that people have their spine functioning and moving properly, and nervous systems are working at full capacity. The biggest thing that we see a lot, is traditional problems, back pain, neck pain, and headaches. But there's a whole host of things beyond that chiropractic is fantastic for. We take care of people from little babies all the way through adolescence, adulthood, and into the elderly. I think our youngest patient is just a few days old, and our oldest is in her 90s, and everywhere in between. So I would say that you're not ever too young or too old, or there's never anybody that's too far gone to do chiropractic care. Along with that, we do offer some nutritional consulting. There's a few products, especially that I kind of champion in my office. I don't get into it too much, but I know that what you put in your body is greatly important to how your body functions as a whole. And so I try to give recommendations there on things that I personally do from a nutritional standpoint as well.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love how you're saying you're working with babies, and you don't hear much about that these days. I mean, I know that's not what we're talking about, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about adjusting, um, babies and even kids at a young age, just for kicks and giggles. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think people have a misconception of what we're going to do to a baby. Honestly, I think if they've ever been adjusted by a chiropractor as an adult, there could be a lot of twisting and popping, and they think, well, I'm not about to let you take my newborn baby and do that to them. And so I think there's just misconceptions there. People will say, well, why would a baby need to be adjusted by a chiropractor? They can't really express things like pain, but we know that one, the pregnancy process is difficult on mom, but also on baby. As they grow, they're cramped in that womb for months and months, and then the delivery process, as natural as we try to make it, can be pretty violent on them, especially if you're using things like vacuum or forceps extraction. There's a lot of pulling and twisting of the neck, and so we see a lot of babies come out with some spinal stress from day one, and that doesn't manifest itself in pain necessarily, but it can create things like ear infections as they get a little bit older. We have a lot of kiddos that come in, moms bring them in because they've got things like colic and reflux. And when the baby's not happy, baby's not sleeping, mom's exhausted, that's a recipe for disaster. So we take care of a lot of babies for things like that. Just to kind of get them calmed down a little bit to minimize and eliminate things like reflux and colic and ear infections as well. And then as they begin to kind of get older and they begin to walk around. Of course, if you ever followed a child around, they're going to fall down all the time.
A
So
lot.
there's a lot of repetitive trauma in just those kind of bumps and bruises along the way. Learning to walk, falling down. And it seems like it's nothing to be concerned about, but those micro traumas over time can create some issues. And we always say that as the twig is bent, so grows the tree. And so if we can get a child on the right path, structurally, but also functionally as they mature through adolescence and into adulthood, we're going to see far less issues to have to undo if we can make sure that their development is on track from day one.
100%. It's a lot of people don't realize that, if let's just say a baby's spine is like this, just a little bit, but if they're so young, you can catch it, you can straighten that out.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of kids come in their teenage years and they've got scoliosis, and those are a lot of things that develop, during those early teenage years. And so the earlier you can catch it, the more chance you have to correct it. And so the last thing that we want to do is just wait until, you're in your 20s, 30s and beyond. And then, now we have some spinal, some postural
Yeah.
deficits to work through and things like that. So we're always trying to be more proactive than reactive. Of course, we're always excited to help those that are in some acute pain situations. But as far as kids go, and even younger adults, the earlier the intervention, the better chances we have for success, and the easier it is to correct.
I wish I would have found you in the 70s. I mean, I'm a bicentennial baby. I'm 76 and I have a light curvature with scoliosis. And I'm like, hey, you never know. If chiropractic was popular in the late 70s, I probably wouldn't be having it right now because you're catching it before it even blossoms. But times have changed. Little late, about 35 years later or 40 years later. But with that being said, the power that made the body that heals the body. Let's talk about that. And why does that stick out to you? And tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a man of faith, and I believe that we were created from conception, and we begin that developmental process. And so for me, I'm big on faith, and I know that the power that made the body, as in God, can heal the body as well. And so I'm no more than a conduit for that healing process to happen. So whenever it comes to people getting better in my chiropractic office, our goal is to one, restore proper movement, motion, and alignment of the spine, but ultimately the system that we're looking to improve is the nervous system, which is
Mhm.
what controls and coordinates everything, right? We have the brain, the spinal cord that works down through the spine, and then all those nerves. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of nerves that just branch out and go to every area of the body. Every organ, tissue, cell, every nook and cranny of the body is innervated and controlled by the nervous system. So if that system is in stress because of some spinal dysfunction, then the body can't be as recuperative as possible. You're going to see things like pain manifest, but also things like dysfunction and dis-ease, which is what creates things like disease. And so we want to make sure that we're seeing the body uh, from a whole function as good as possible. And that starts with taking care of that nervous system.
I really like number one. I like how you mentioned faith, and of course, you've got faith right behind you. I love it. It just kind of works together. And What's interesting about that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that from what I've learned is that right right when before like the first heartbeat is the spark. I hear that it's like born right into it. That's when the body is created. And it's interesting how God created that so perfect and how our bodies were actually created to heal. But if we don't have the right alignment of aligning with the right person that has those type of giftings, our body will deteriorate. So when did you start coming to emotion of like, hey, you know what? The body was literally made to heal. When did that kind of come into your mind? And then you said, you know what? I'm going to start telling people about that. Like, when was that birth?
Yeah, I mean that's a philosophical tenet of chiropractic is that the body was designed to heal itself. So
Okay.
if you cut your finger and you do nothing, the body will heal itself, right? If you go to the morgue and you cut the finger of a dead person, the body will not heal because that nervous system, what's healing the body is not functioning anymore. So
Mhm.
the goal is just to unlock the potential that the body has to heal itself and then ensure that along the way the nervous system is free of interference. And so, for me, it was kind of, going into chiropractic, I came from a background of I had low back pain. And so I thought, well, I'm going to work on people that have low back pain and I'm going to be somebody that helps people with low back pain. And you get into chiropractic and you start hearing the philosophy behind chiropractic and you start talking about things like nervous system dysfunction and, that kind of cycle that happens from there. And it gets you pretty excited to understand that there's more than just taking care of people that have back pain, neck pain, or headaches. But unfortunately, that's what most people think of when they think of chiropractic is, well, I've never had really debilitating sciatic nerve pain, or I've never had really bad neck pain, or I don't deal with headaches on a daily basis, or things like numbness in my hands. But we know that when we can, optimize the way the body functions by taking care of the nervous system, that people will, likely avoid or greatly minimize the things like pain, the things like dysfunction, disease that lead to disease.
I love it. Do you see that new? Would you say that nutrition plays 50% of the role in the power of keeping the body healthy and strong and not getting into inflammation?
Yeah, I mean, I think nutrition is hugely important. What you consume or what you don't consume plays a huge role in it. And our food supply is just kind of getting more and more depleted. It's getting more and more processed. So I think it's really important to look at nutrition, look at supplementation, and there's a plant that I actually became aware of just about a year ago called Moringa oleifera, and it's a plant that grows over in Southeast Asia, Africa, India, the Philippines, and it's probably the most nutrient dense botanical on the planet. And so I've aligned myself with a company that produces probably the most efficient and amazing blend of the moringa using the plant leaf powder, but also the dried fruit cake and the seed pods to give your body, 92 verifiable vitamins and minerals, 36 very powerful anti-inflammatories, which in my world is helpful because we take care of a lot of people that have chronic joint pain, especially the older people as they get older, there's a lot of inflammation. And so finding ways to see natural anti-inflammatories is very, very important. 46 antioxidants, all 20 amino acids, omega 3, 6, and 9. So it's just, like I said, it's the most nutrient dense botanical on the planet. And so it's a product that I started taking daily in December of 2024. And I've been making some recommendations to friends, family, and patients ever since because I do think that nutrition plays a huge role in our overall health and how we age. Our goal is, to have a long, healthy life, minimize the disease span, have a long health span. Honestly, die old and die healthy. You see people walking around in younger years than they should with just a lot of debilitating chronic disease, inflammatory disease, and a lot of it comes down to what they put in their bodies as far as eating and drinking. And so looking for ways to minimize the inflammatory processes, eating good natural whole foods, I think is super important.
So this leaf that you're talking about, that's we said it's in Africa, or where did you say it's at?
Yeah, it grows more in kind of tropical arid climate, so it
Okay.
doesn't grow well in the States. You can kind of grow it more climate controlled, but it's kind of natural in, Central and South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. Our farms are actually located in the country of India. We've got 1,500 plantations where we hand harvest and shade dry, the tree.
So you're getting the quality.
The quality for sure. It's all pesticide free, insecticide free, herbicide free from day one.
Wow.
And we shade dry the leaves. Again, we use the fruit cake and the seed pod, and just the amount of nutrients that is in that plant is just amazing. So we actually it comes to us in just an easy to use packet, right? Like
Uh-huh.
this is a 1 day supply. You just rip it, put it in some water, mix it, and go. And it's going to hit 92 verifiable vitamins and minerals. Again, 36 anti-inflammatories, 46 antioxidants, and it's just amazing. So there was a book written called The Miracle Tree, and it's about the moringa plant. And most of us in America don't know what it is because again, it's not readily grown here, but it's becoming more and more understood just how powerful that is. And so for us, if we can supercharge our day by getting a good nutrients supplement, that's again, natural, not synthetic, because a lot of what we take as far as vitamins and minerals are going to be synthetic, man-made. This is just made from God. It's just a tree that they found a way to blend it down and dry it out, and it's just amazing.
What have you noticed that how it's helped you? Like, did you notice anything like within 30 days, 60 days, a week?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm in my early 40s, but things like just energy level. I mean, I'm a go kind of guy. I get up early to exercise. I've got a family. We're busy, so for me, just natural energy. A little bit of brain fog reduction. As a chiropractor, there's a lot of pushing and pulling on patients. Again, I exercise daily, so kind of some of the chronic joint pain just minimized too. Now, what I'm seeing in other people, friends, family, and patients is pretty phenomenal as far as just chronic joint issues. People in their 60s and 70s, feeling like they're almost reverse aging with things like knee pain and elbow pain.
No way.
I've got male patients that come in and they have elevated PSA levels. They got prostate issues. Start taking it, and whether this or something else, their prostate begins to shrink. They begin to see decrease in PSA numbers. It really helps normalize things like blood pressure, blood sugar, things like that. So there's so many good functional benefits. But for me, the biggest thing that I'm seeing that I'm really promoting in my office is more of kind of just the energy boost and also the pain relief because of the anti-inflammatories.
Awesome. And if somebody wanted to get information on that, do you have your own link or how does that work?
Yeah, they can contact me through my office website is fine. I'm happy to give you my direct number as well as email. But yeah, they would order direct through me.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of a direct ship to the house, super easy. And again, it's for me, it's a daily thing that I'm going to take in perpetuity because I understand that just our nutritional, like the food chain is just depleted so bad that a stalk of broccoli now is not like a stalk of broccoli in the 70s, and so I think supplementation is necessary because just we're seeing such a depleted food chain.
Wow. It's interesting how our supply has just keeps getting depleted. I mean, like I'm just kind of curious, like what's the next direction? You know what I mean? That for us as civilization,
Yeah, it's
if it
very, very
keeps
tough.
depleting, I guess I go to McDonald's to get a burger that's not even it's all chemical bound.
Yeah, I mean, I think sustainable farming. We have to have that.
Get back to the basics.
Yeah, there's plenty of food. I just think it's the type of food is not great. So I think farming in a sustainable manner, from produce, but also to like animal farming and stuff. If you're looking at cattle and you're looking at pigs, I mean, there's it's a pretty crazy industry. So I think just getting back to the basics and finding out how to do it sustainably, re-enriching the ground with things like minerals, I think is super important, but we just overproduce and overgrow and it just depletes the soil, which then depletes the food itself.
What are some other ways that you help people, even though we're going through this depletion crisis, to heal the body? Like, what are other ways or other nutrients, or not just even nutrients, but if somebody comes in to your office, just I'm going to go out a limb, comes into your office and they're struggling with, say, scoliosis, and they have pain in here, and what are some of the steps that you would recommend, and how would you work with that person to focus on the healing of the body or making that body better and stronger?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, for me as a chiropractor, I want to get my hands on their spine and make sure that we're making positive corrections to how it's aligned, to how it moves. We're trying to decompress things, take pressure off joints, discs, and ultimately nerves. We're really encouraging them to be proactive on their own as well. Look at the way they go about their day. If there's any sort of repetitive stress in their life, how they sit at their office chair, their
Hmm.
computer monitors, ergonomics is super important. Do they move? Do they not move? Do they exercise? Do they not exercise? Stretching is super important. So just really putting some onus on them to be more proactive with their health. Move their body daily. Like we complicate health, but really it just comes down to moving your body daily, right? Getting plenty of rest, working on minimizing and eliminating stress, although that's pretty difficult, but you can minimize it. Learn how to cope with it at least. What
Yep.
you eat, what you drink, all those things matter. So it's just some simple things that if we can really be intentional with our lifestyle, that's going to go a long way to helping us feel great and optimizing our health.
Awesome. What are some other ways that you also see maybe in your clinic that you're helping with? We understand the power is, of course, God, Jesus, whatever your whose faith is. I mean, I believe that, Jesus is the power, God is the power. We have different beliefs out there, and we're not in a debatable show, so that's kind of cool. But besides that, what are some of the things that you've noticed that you're doing in your practice that's also healing the body? Of course, the hands are very powerful because a lot of people don't realize that there's two types of energy. You've got bad energy, and then you've got clean energy that, when it touches a body, there actually is a changing of the molecules. Can we maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things about positive mindset on things, and if you're going into an office to receive treatment with the mindset and the belief that this will help you, that's going to help you get better. At least increase the chances of it. If you go into it with just self doubt and you're depressed and you're upset and you're just down, you will not heal. So there's such a power of your mindset as well. And if you go into an office with a positive outlook, with understanding that he's going to do or she's going to do their best to help you, and you expect to heal, you have a greater chance of doing that. So I think mindset is super important. There's a lot of self doubt. The educated brain can often work against us sometimes when it comes to our health and our healing.
Mhm.
So I think for me, just like you mentioned, the energy, keeping the mind positive, looking at the positive things, accepting and believing and resonating with the fact that you are healing and you are getting better and better. That is going to play a huge role in your recovery from anything.
I would also agree, and I'm sure you would also agree too, that our words that come out of our mouth have a big effect on our body.
Yep, yep. The words that come out, the things that we listen to, the things that we think about, like all those things matter. And
Mhm.
it might seem trivial to some, but it has a huge impact on how you feel, not just physically, but also emotionally.
What's interesting about that? There was a study where you've probably seen it, where they got an apple and they cut it in half and they put one apple, the other half of the apple in a room playing Metallica, really just heavy stuff, just, da, 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 just rocking. Nothing wrong with Metallica, but you get it. But the
Yeah.
words that were coming out of it, they were seeing that the words had power, and that's energy coming out, and that they had the other half of the apple and they put it playing classical music, positive. And it's interesting, after a week they went back looking at each half, and the one playing, Metallica or really distorted music, it was all just dark. And then the other half of that apple that was playing classical, it was like almost like it was still fresh, which is very interesting. That kind of tells a lot about us, I believe. If we're not clean up here, or clear, I like to use the word clean, but clear minded, it's going to start to affect even body parts. Because if you're a happy person, you'll notice they walk differently. The posture's up. A non-happy person who's just depressed, struggling with depression, whatever it may be, not bagging on that person, but you notice the difference in the posture, the way they talk, the way they look at you. And I think that has a lot to do with the healing of our body. Not saying that it heals our body, but I believe it helps us to not, what's the word, decay, as in feeling what our body will start to act on the way that we're feeling, the way that we're sensing.
Yeah.
So what would you say? How would you what would you say to people out there that maybe their body is having a hard time healing and they're going out to other doctors and these doctors are prescribing them pills for whatever that may be, but you and I know that the pills only last for so long, and probably 80% of it is one, our nutrition, and that little 20% that could be the 80% could be our mindset, the way we think about what we're doing, what we're putting into our mouth, what we're putting into our mind, even pills.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important, you know. I saw a similar thing that you talked about, like with the apple. Just I think we have to speak life into people, and I think we have to speak life to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Everything's relative, and I think things like social media can be fantastic, but can also be a huge deterrent for mental health because, man, you go on there and you think that you're something, and then you see somebody with a bigger house and a faster car and a bigger bank account, and before you know it, you're excited about yourself, but now you're comparing yourself to others, and so you can get really really down on yourself. So I think it's important to to have joy in life, and to not compare yourself to others. Speak life to your family, speak life to your friends. Surround yourself with people that are going to speak life into you, that are going to challenge you in a good way. But I think there's so much power in what we think and what we hear and what we say, that we can't ignore that, because that's going to have a lot of impact on how we go through life and how we heal and our health in general. You're right. The people that are just down, you can see it in their posture, in their shoulders. They slump, they look down. You know, it's
You
just
can hear it in their voice.
it's just sad to see. And ultimately, I think they feel like they don't have any sort of maybe purpose in life, or something to live for. So I think finding that purpose in life is very important. And I think plugging into a group and having community. I think we were designed to be amongst others, not by ourselves. So there's so many things that we can just make some subtle changes in how we go about our life, not just physically, but also spiritually and emotionally, that make a
Mhm.
huge difference.
And there's something that I wanted to kind of hit on. It's interesting. It's funny. You got this faith thing right in front of my face. I love it. I love it, by the way. And not the George Michael faith from the song. Um, Faith has a lot to do with the healing of your body. That's what kind of just hit me right now. If you don't have faith, if you don't have a faith in what created you, you become a wandering statistic. And when things hit you in life, you're not going to know how to deal with it because faith, correct me if I'm wrong, it anchors you. And I believe it heals the body. It does. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the title of this podcast is "The Power That Made the Body Heals the Body," and that takes a certain amount of faith. You
Yes.
that you were designed for a purpose, that you were designed with intention. It wasn't just a haphazard accident. So I think that's very, very important to have faith that all things will work together for those who believe. And, you got to have a positive mindset. It might not go your way all the time. Things happen that are out of your control. You can't always control. In fact, you can often rarely control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond to the things that happen to you. And I think that's very important, is how you respond to situations, whether they're positive or whether they're negative. You can always control your outlook and your mindset moving forward.
It's interesting. Please, you're the doctor here, so I'm the layman's here. We're talking about the healing of the body. Is it possible? You mentioned about how we respond to things. If I'm responding to things in a blow up mode all the time and getting upset, doesn't that put so much stress on the body and can also heal to unhealing of the body where it creates problems that weren't there before?
Yeah, there's two systems. There's the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest part of your nervous system, and there's the sympathetic, which is kind of the fight or flight. And they don't really work together at the same time. So you can't really be in fight or flight while you're resting and digesting, if that makes sense. So if
Mhm.
you're constantly on edge and you're always stressed and you're always blowing up, well, your body's in a constant state of that sympathetic overdrive, you're always keyed up, you're always in fight or flight. You can't really rest and digest. And that's honestly the rest and digest aspect. The parasympathetic is where we see most of our recovery come from. So you have to find ways to throttle back that hyper overdrive sympathetic and move more into a parasympathetic rest and digest so that your body has a chance to heal and recover. So, the way that you respond to things, the stress that you have yourself under, one, there's certain hormones and chemicals that the body, creates and secretes when we are in stress, which again, they're not going to be positive for health and recovery. We need to find ways to just rest and slow down so that we can have a chance to heal.
What are I'm gonna jump out on a limb just for funs, kicks and giggles and stuff like that. If somebody doesn't have faith, how does one get faith? Do they Google it? How does that work? But say they want faith. There's probably somebody here that's probably watching and they're like, I just don't have faith. How does one get faith? How does that work?
Yeah, for me, I think faith comes from being around people that that exude their faith, Um, and that's why I think, attending a church is really, really important because you're going to be surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded.
Hmm.
And so you can kind of borrow their faith in the moment until you can develop your own. So I think that's part of it is just surrounding yourself with people that you want to be like. And they say that you're going to be like the five people that you hang out with. And so if you're hanging out with people that are always negative, that have no faith, that just thinks the world is going to end, versus being around people who are positive and uplifting and are speaking life and have faith and go to church and just have
Hmm.
a really good positive outlook, you're going to feel different, you're going to look different, you're going to think different thoughts. So I think in the short term you have to just surround yourself with people who have experienced things and who have the faith. And I think in the short term you can kind of borrow off of what they've
Hmm.
experienced, have those conversations, and then look into things for yourself.
I love it. I don't think people realize like when you do your own research, I'm not going to go deep into this, but there's a scripture, I believe it's in Proverbs, what a man thinks or woman, what a man thinks he becomes. And there's so much truth to that, even though people will say it was Buddha. Sorry, God said it first. But what a man thinks he becomes, and they're so powerful because if I'm thinking in my head, I'm not going to be able to do this, man. This is never working. I'm not making enough money. It's like I. Instead of getting your focus on that and start realizing, you know what? I'm going to do better. I'm going to get healed. And people don't realize that when you start speaking life over your body, what happens is you start to heal and then you start thinking, okay, well, what do I need to put into my body that's going to be healthy? What type of friends do I need to cut off that have been bringing me down? What you said there, you can tell a lot about a person by the first main five people that they hang out with. Because if you're hanging out with people that are, speaking of faith, that are speaking life, it is contagious. Like you said, you kind of borrow it. It almost kind of just jumps on you. If you got four people full of faith and you got one negative person, and that one person starts hanging out with those four people, you're going to end up seeing him hanging out with them, and the mind starts to change. The brain starts to change because we don't realize that the brain has these, I call them little freeways, and we'll call this one freeway a negative. It can remove into a positive. It can redevelop, and a lot of people don't realize it. Um, I don't know how long that takes. I know that some people have said that it takes to break a bad habit within like I think 60 to 90 days. What are your thoughts on that? As in going from this side of not the faith and then this side of rethinking. Do you think that's something that could be instantaneous, or is that something that's going to take time because of just how time is?
Yeah, no, I do think it takes some time. I mean, you can probably start feeling some instant change, but I think to make a true, lasting change, it does take some time and it takes some repetition. So it's not going to be a thing that happens overnight. Just like the way our body heals. When somebody comes into my office, I say, listen, you've dealt with this condition for months or years, and
Yeah.
so it's unfair to expect it to go away because it took years of stress to build at this point. But if you stick, to the plan and you're intentional with the way you go about life,
Right.
your body will heal, especially if you have a positive mindset and you believe that you are in the healing process. So I don't think it can happen instantly, but I do think that you can begin to instantly move that direction. And I think in the short term you can feel some changes, but I think to see true change occurs, it does take time.
No, I love it. So to land this in a perfect way, because when we started to talk, you started to talk about, you gave me this title, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't really think of it that way. So we talk about this power. When did the light bulb turn on for you? When did you start to understand, wow, this is powerful? When did that moment happen for you? And how did that look?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just a gradual change, somebody that, you're born into, you know, you're born into your existence, you have some ups and downs. You start to see things happen in life. You start to see, miracles happen. And in chiropractic school, you hear from people who have gone through some very miraculous changes and improvements in their health. And I think you begin to believe that is possible for anyone. There's going to be situations that don't go your way. You're going to have people who just won't respond or don't have the ability to heal for whatever reason. But I think for me, it's just listening to people's experiences and hearing what they've gone through and how they've recovered. You start to see that over and over and over again, and you realize that there is a power in what we do. There is a power in what we think. There is a power ultimately in the power that made the body heals the body. That nervous system has the ability to reverse any condition, given the right circumstances. And it's not going to be an every time thing, but it's very, very possible, far more possible than people give it credit for.
I love it. I love the great topic, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here on the show. Everyone out there, remember it takes one video to change one person's life. And if this video hits you guys, if you want to make sure that you share it, sharing is caring. And you can also go to Eastern Oklahoma chiropractic.com. You can see Dr. Travis Ring. You can also call the number on the screen. We also have the website on the screen. You can also get some information about this beautiful powder supplement that is not just organic, but it'll also help heal your body, especially if you're struggling with inflammation and joint pain. So, again, thank you so much, Dr. Travis. The power that made the body heals the body. Thank you so much. And before we leave, if you could give one message to the listeners, what would that be?
Yeah, I think that the most powerful force in life is love. And so I think, find out ways to exude that and get that to others. Have faith wherever possible. Just be a positive light to people. You never know what somebody's going through. And so for me, just let your light shine to others. Be a positive influence as often as you can. Find out who you can open a door for or give a hug to or just smile at somebody. Those sort of emotional interactions have a huge impact on people's life.
It's the little things. Just like the Titanic, it was the little thing that sunk the ship. But it's little things like love and sharing that with others. It'd be amazed how you actually change somebody's day.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Doc. Appreciate you.
That's my pleasure.